Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. I want to thank my sponsors, the Health Channel. So please go to their website, allhealthgo, and sign up for their newsletter. And if you have any needs for workspaces, offices, or simply a virtual office, Alexa's Workspaces. And welcome to your best resource group, Aventura Moms on Facebook. And from the Power of the Hills, we look forward to seeing you every month, the second Thursday at the AC Hotel in Aventura. You can be re-energized, refocused, and reimagined. So Jason, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So today's conversation is actually one that we have not had before. It's about the elderly population, even beyond seniors. Because now I'm considered a senior. So it's even beyond me. And I know that it's difficult when you are the sandwich generation, which I think we're all now, more or less. Unfortunately, my parents both passed away. But we are in the sandwich generation where we're taking care of our kids, even our grandkids, and also our parents.
Right.
And there's a lot of different things that you hear. So that's the reason why I wanted to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
So let me start by asking you something. You were telling me about Medicare and Medicaid. So first of all, tell me the difference between both.
Yeah, very good. So Medicare, your viewers, I'm sure, are going to be much more familiar with. That is the program that you are entitled to when you turn 65. And if you've been working so many years and you've paid into the system, you are entitled to a version of Medicare, which is most well known as being a good health insurance program, right? It helps pay for your hospitalizations, your prescriptions, your doctor visits, things like that. That Medicare does not care how much or how little money you have. You get it because you paid into the system. And then if you want to supplement it or you get an Advantage plan, you can pay a little extra and you get these little bonuses. But even if you have the best Medicare plan on the planet, Medicare is very limited when it comes to long-term care. Medicare is very limited when it comes to,
what's the difference with Medicaid?
Yeah, so I was defining Medicare and then Medicaid.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. So Medicaid is also a health insurance program for some people, but Medicaid is more than one thing. So what I mean by that is when people say I'm applying for Medicaid or I'm going to get onto Medicaid, we don't know what that means just by saying that. It depends on which Medicaid program they're going to be applying to. So for my clients who I'm typically working with people who are either over the age of 65 or under the age of 65 and disabled, they're going to be interested in the Medicaid programs that help pay for long-term care, right? That's either help paying for care at home, that's help paying for care in an assisted living facility, or help paying for care in a skilled nursing facility or nursing home. So to answer your question, Medicaid will help pay for this long-term care. Medicare will not.
But Medicaid wasn't for the people that have a low income versus Medicare, wasn't that?
That's a great question. Yeah, so that's a very big part of it, which in order to qualify for Medicaid, you have to meet certain income and asset thresholds, right? I mean, you have to make less than a certain amount of money. You have to have less than a certain amount of money. And so what I tell people is that's why people come to me. They come to me because they don't qualify for Medicaid. They say, listen, I'm not a Rockefeller, I'm not the wealthiest person in the world, but I have more than what Medicaid requires. And so why are we even having this conversation? We're having it because there's two ways to qualify for Medicaid. You can either become poor, right? You can lose all of your money because This is all precipitated on the idea that the greatest threat to your assets, statistically speaking, is long-term care costs, right? Because most people don't have long-term care insurance, and if they can get it, they should absolutely get it, but most people don't have it. It's very expensive to get. So now the biggest threat to your assets is long-term care. Now, if you're wealthy, if you have millions and millions of dollars in the bank, you privately pay. You don't ever have a conversation about Medicaid.
Correct. You pay for
Yeah,
someone to take care of you.
exactly.
Yeah.
You have the money. It's no big deal. You're happy. No, your family's not worried. You're good to go. And that's great. That's wonderful. If you're on the other opposite end, if you have nothing, then you might already qualify for this Medicaid program to help pay for care at home or care in a facility. So it's everyone in the middle who is at risk, right? It's people who are more middle class or upper middle class, right? They have some money in the bank, they own their home, and they don't want to lose these assets before they naturally qualify for Medicaid. So that's what I do. I work with people who typically they're not super wealthy, because the super wealthy are fine. They can privately pay. And then, so the people who have something to lose and are worried about the cost of long-term care, we're able to legally and ethically protect their assets and then get them qualified for this Medicaid program before they lose everything.
What do
Okay.
you mean protect their assets? Like, how can you lose it?
Yeah.
What are you
So,
talking about in a sense that you could lose your assets?
so for
Long-term
example,
care.
let's use a very, we can use a couple of different examples. So let's say you need care at home.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't live independently on your own, you need someone to help you with whether it's cleaning, preparing food, bathing, getting in and out of bed, dressing, right? Whatever people as they get older start to need some help with. Well, at first it may not be a big deal. If you need a help for an hour a day, maybe you go, you know what, I can afford that. I can privately pay for that. Not a big deal. But when you start to need multiple hours a day or round the clock care, that gets very expensive very quickly. So when I'm talking about a threat to your assets, it's because these people, many people, are looking at their own bank account and they're writing a check to the home care agency every month, right? And so they're seeing their money go down. Or if they're in a facility of some kind, right? Assisted living facilities and nursing homes, we're talking about an expense of $2,500 on the very low end to $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 per month on the high end. So people who think they have a lot of money, right? They think they've saved $500,000. That can go very, very quickly when you're paying for long-term care. So when I say protect the assets, what I mean is have these assets and be able to protect it in a way where you don't have to use it all up before you can get the government's help paying for these long-term care services.
Got it. So you can get them qualified.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And it's all, so some people say, well, isn't this, I don't want to hide anything from the government. I go, no, me either. I go, I don't want to do anything everything is above board. I tell the government exactly what it is that I did with my client's assets and why they're still have to give my client grant them these benefits. So what I'm doing is, you can think of, there's another analogy I like to use where if you can imagine for a second that you had $20 million in the bank. If we imagine that for a second, what you would do is you would go to a tax attorney and you would say, how can I legally and ethically, I want to use the law. I want to just use the law in my favor. I don't want to break any laws. I don't want to hide anything. I don't want to get in trouble. But how can I legally and ethically protect and pay as little in taxes as possible, right? People do that all the time. For Medicaid planning, I'm doing the same exact thing. I'm just doing it for folks who are more in the middle class, upper middle class range. I'm using the legal tools available to us that are all found within state and federal law. And because again, my client comes to me and they go, I'm making up a number, $300,000 in the bank. They can't have anywhere near that amount to qualify for Medicaid. So the month before, we're maneuvering the money in different ways, all according to state and federal law. And then I'm telling the government about it. I'm saying, I'm applying for Medicaid. I'm saying, you're going to notice my client had $300,000. Now they have $2,000. Here's what we did with the money. And here's why you still have to grant my client access to these benefits.
Do they have to go before and arrange all this? Or if, for example, something happens and you
Mhm.
need the care, can you still
Yeah.
apply and
Yes.
do all
Yes.
that?
So it's a really good question, because I would say most of my clients do not plan in advance for this,
No, correct. Nobody
because
plans.
they're exactly. So most of my clients come to me going, I have this huge long-term care bill coming up and I need help paying for it yesterday. I don't have time to wait. So the answer is yes. We help. Most of our clients are people we are helping, and within a few months, we're getting them eligible for this program. Now, there are people who do have the wherewithal to plan. Maybe they have a history of Alzheimer's in their family, or they saw what a loved one has gone through, and they're going, I see what's happening here. What can we do in advance? And if they can plan in advance, we have other interesting things that we can do, but that certainly doesn't apply to everyone. Most of my clients need help paying for home care or facility care right now.
So Medicare normally,
Mhm.
the 65 will pay us an insurance, but will not pay long-term.
Yeah, Medicare, if you are in a nursing home or rehab facility, they'll pay up to 100 days, but that's it. And then if you
100
want care,
days.
100 days. And usually only the first 20
100
days,
days is 3
yeah,
months.
3 months, exactly. It's not supposed to be a long-term solution. Medicare is supposed to be a short-term.
For
That's
sure, sure.
that's why. It's
Okay.
not designed for long-term. So the idea is for people who need to be in a rehab facility, but they're going to get out of the rehab, then Medicare might be fine. Medicare will pay for the first 20 days of rehab facility in full, and then days 21 through 100, so the remaining 80 days out of the 100, there will be a daily copay, or typically it's $200 a day, but it could be less if you have a good supplement. But after 100 days, you can have the best Medicare supplement in the world. They're not paying. Medicare is not paying 1 red cent to an assisted living facility. Zero, never, not 1 day, not 100 days, 0 days. If you're at home, it is possible to get a doctor if you are in need of skilled nursing care. Medicare will approve a very limited number of hours per week of like other attendant care is what they call it. But if you don't need the skilled care, you're not eligible for the attendant care. And even when you do get it, the doctor has to recertify it every 6 months or 6 weeks, something like that. And it goes away very quickly. So Medicare is really not a good idea to rely on for long-term care at home or in a facility, whereas Medicaid provides a much higher level of service.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're talking about long-term facilities.
Yeah.
And we live in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
where half of the population of the US is
That's right.
moving here to retire. And there's amazing luxury assisted living, independent living.
Yep.
But on the other side, we hear horror stories
Mm-hmm.
about how they abuse the elderly, and nobody speaks about it. Like,
Yep.
what can you do? Like, for example, if there's a case that it happened to your parents, like, what can you do about it?
Yeah. I tell
Because
people I have a few pieces of advice related to getting good care in a facility. Um, the first is if my client has local family, right? If they're in Florida and their family's also if they're in South Florida and their family's also in South Florida, I say it's always good to try to find a facility that is close to where your adult children live. Um, the idea is we want someone being able to visit you, my client who's in the facility. We want someone to be able to visit you regularly, often, in the middle of the night sometimes. We want the facility not knowing when they're going to be checked out, right? Because in these facilities, you can see Mrs. Smith in room 1 is getting a wonderful level of care, and Mr. Jones in room 2 is getting horrible care, and they're in their same facility. usually there's two things at play. One is the CNA who's assigned to room one, things that she thinks that she's
What's
put
the
here.
CNA?
A certified nursing assistant. They're typically like the people providing the most attention in one of these facilities, right? So the CNA in room one, it believes that it's her duty from God she's put here on this earth to care for other people. So she takes her job seriously. Whereas the CNA in room two is doing it for the paycheck and is on the iPhone all day long and not paying attention, right? So when in either of those situations, when you have someone who's coming to visit and check up and look at the chart and check the condition and make sure that they have an advocate, is often the difference between great care and substandard care. Now, for people who don't live in Florida or South Florida or nearby, or they're just very busy. I have lots of that too. People who just, again, like we were talking about before, this is the sandwich generation and people have their own kids to take care of and they can't watch over their parent every day. Another wonderful use of Medicaid planning is if we can protect assets, we can use some of that to pay a private advocate, right? There are geriatric care managers who you can privately pay to come in once a day, once a week, once every other week, whatever it is that makes sense. So you have a professional who's like your boots on the ground, right? When you can't be there.
That everything is okay.
Exactly. So those are the types of things that I really try to advocate for. And again, it's one of the beautiful aspects of Medicaid planning, whereas if we can set aside some money that you can still use for your benefit, it's going to improve the quality of your life. And a wonderful use of this money that we're able to protect is let's hire someone to come in who is going to check in on you periodically and keep the family updated for the times where the family just can't be there as often as they'd like.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being a lawyer, talk to me about the NDR.
Yes, the DNR, yes.
The DNR.
Yeah, so that's part of we do a lot of
do not resuscitate.
Do not resuscitate. Yeah. So that's it's really a medical document, but I would say it falls under the estate planning side of our practice, right? Where we're doing the wills and the trusts and the powers of attorney and things like that. The DNR is something that people talk to their doctors about. It's typically it's a very specific state form. So there's nothing special about, like nothing that I do about a DNR is special, right? It's a specific state form that doctors or hospitals will provide.
So you don't need a lawyer to
Not for a DNR. Not for a DNR.
Okay.
No, it's a doc. Yeah, you need the doctor. Yeah. And if you're at home, it's a yellow piece of paper. It's got to be a very specific piece of paper, very specific paper color, right? So you put one in the medical chart. You put one if you're at home and you want a DNR. You put one.
Where do you get it if you don't have an estate planning lawyer?
Yeah, a doctor's office will be a DNR. A DNR, yeah. That's different, by the way, from things like a healthcare surrogate, right? That's a healthcare surrogate designation or a power of attorney. That's different. That's the lawyer. That's something
if you want somebody to make decisions for you, correct?
Yeah, exactly. A DNR is really just saying that I don't want major efforts taken to save my life, because they get to the point where they recognize that the end of life has the potential, unfortunately, to be a painful experience, right? Like we were talking about someone who's 100 years old and really not doing very well, maybe doesn't want a doctor doing the chest compressions that are going to crack the ribs.
Or the tube.
Oh, the intubation. Yeah, exactly. Correct. Exactly right. And so the DNR is when someone's at the point in time in their lives when they're making it clear, when it's my time, I just want to be pain-free and I want to be let go. That's also, by the way, an important component of what's called a living will. That's something that a lawyer can provide as well. The living will also says if I'm in a terminal condition, an end-stage condition, I'm alive and I'm unconscious, but I'm alive but not alive, then I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be hooked up to machines, right? That's another important component. That is a legal component that a lawyer like us would help our clients put together as part of our estate planning package. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so those are two completely different
Different, correct.
documents.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Oh,
can think of it, the DNR is the yellow form, that's you get from a doctor. That's not, you don't get that from a lawyer.
got it. So if anybody wants to reach out, where do they find you?
Yeah, so there's a number behind me, 786-756-8169. They can email me, jason@elderneedslaw.com, and they can CC my assistant's client care at elderneedslaw.com. I have a pretty good YouTube channel where I give out a lot of good practical information. It's just at Elder Needs Law. I've written a book, How to Get Medicaid to Pay for Some or All of Your Long-Term Care Expenses Without Having to Wait 5 years, without having to sell your house, without having to go broke first. That's on Amazon, and I'm happy to send you links to all that if you'd like to share it. And it's all about, this is all, my mission is to get out good information. This is not, none of this is a sales job. Like, for example, this book, if you're going to go see another lawyer, will make you a more educated legal consumer. I'm okay with that. I want people to have good information out there because this world is filled with lots of bad information, especially as it pertains to estate planning and Medicaid planning.
Did
So
anything happen that you advocate so much for the elderly and all this beyond the normal job?
yeah, I would say that I used to. So I've been a lawyer for about 16 years. About 9 or 10 have been doing elder law. And before this, I worked for a very well-respected personal injury law firm. And I happen to represent a lot of clients who were elderly and getting injured. And I saw what they were going through. So, even after we might have gotten them this nice big settlement check, if they needed long-term care, that settlement check was going to disappear, right? And so as I started learning more about Medicaid planning, I said, wow, what a really amazing service that nobody knows about, including many lawyers. Many lawyers don't know that what I do exists. Yeah. So when I learned about this, again, 9 or 10 years ago, 11 years ago, whatever it was, I said, this is an incredible benefit that people don't know that they can qualify for. Everyone thinks that they have to sell their house. Everyone thinks that they have to go broke before they qualify for this stuff, or if they even know it exists in the first place. So it's my commitment to bring these lesser known resources more of a spotlight and educate the public about them.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
My great pleasure, Gladys.
Thank you, everyone. Until next week, and above all, stay safe. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.